In today's video, we're gonna be answering your questions about sports videography. Let's go. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. What is up? Welcome back. Pete here. What is up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Pete Gottschalk, content producer for Major League Baseball. It's February. I try and do one of these every year. We're doing a Q&A video. The other day on Instagram, I asked y'all to ask me some questions. There were some really good questions. There were some really, goofy questions too. But we're gonna get into some of them. Nick Kuhlman asks, favorite piece of equipment besides the camera itself and anything you find essential. I'd say one of my favorite pieces of gear that I use is the 360 camera. It's just a very unique piece of gear and it's just kind of like informal. You can use it wherever for behind the scenes. I can do it for runouts. I love the look of it and it's cool and fascinating to me, the technology. So Quayo7 asks, how did you start working for MLB? I got my job like a month before the pandemic as a part-time video content creator. I have a video on this, specifically on my YouTube channel maybe 2 years ago. But yeah, I kind of got lucky, got the job right before I graduated college, then the pandemic hit. Zach's Flicks asks, favorite shoot you've ever been a part of? There's been so many over the years that have been my favorite. I'd say we went to the Czech Republic in 2023 with my colleague Joe and Matt and a couple other people. And that was just like really fun, really unique. We basically shot a documentary for the Czech, well, not for the Czech baseball team, but about the Czech baseball team. It was really cool. We interviewed people at their jobs and their place of employment because obviously they are part-time baseball players, but they have jobs, and then they were going to play in the WBC against like Shohei Ohtani and stuff. So that and the location of going to Prague for baseball was just like really cool. Definitely that one. And then also like last month I went to the Dominican with Julio Rodriguez, and that was just like a really fun trip with like amazing people around him, and getting to see what he did for his own community was really cool. So that's probably number 2. Sheridan014 says, best ways to network and gain new opportunities. I'm assuming you're asking this in like a videography space. I would say it's really no different than other opportunities. Definitely use the internet, especially Instagram. I got my job at MLB through Instagram. Definitely post your work on your social sites and people will reach out to you, and don't be afraid to reach out to people. It's been well documented that people have gotten jobs through DMing athletes or gotten into the industry through DMing a local team and getting in and building their portfolio for free or for cheap. Or you definitely have to go and DM people, but don't just DM to get media credentials, because that's just not the best way to go about it. I'm gonna use Nate Blumberg as an example, who's a good friend of mine. He lives down in Florida. He would DM me and Farachi, my other friend, when he worked at MLB for years, just like, how do I get into this? What do I need? He would send us work and stuff like that, and just that way he was in our heads. And then he got a job with MLB, and then he improved his skills, and then he was able to kind of start his own production company and everything. So I think that's the way to go about it. DM people, but do it in a tactical way. Don't just DM for credentials. _ze.media_ asks, what's a good shutter speed when doing motion tracking? I'd say it gets easier the higher you go, obviously, because there's less natural motion blur. So whenever you do motion tracking edits, if you don't know, you're gonna have to scale in and zoom and keyframe a little bit, and it'll naturally do that too when you actually do the edit. So there's gonna be a lot of motion. You don't want a ton of motion blur. It's actually hard to do it at 24 frames a second. Everyone says the 180-degree rule, but definitely maybe try 90 degrees. So if you're shooting 120 frames, shoot 1/500. If you're shooting 60, do 1/250. I think having a little bit less might help for those edits, definitely. B.flick Edit asks, is the A7 IV worth it even though the video is cropped 4K 60? Any other hybrid alternatives? No, I definitely think it's worth it. Ultimately, the average Joe is not going to know that your video is cropped a little bit. Sure, it'll lose a little bit of quality, but I really don't think at this point it matters. People are still shooting 1080. 4K 60 cropped is better than 1080. So, and in terms of being a good hybrid between photo and video, the A7 IV I think is like a perfect starter camera. You could even use a A7 III, which I still do. So, that's a good starter camera too. So no, I think that's not a problem at all. JJones_7, how to stand out and get job interviews. Definitely have a good resume, as cliche as that's gonna sound. If I'm going through applications and I see your resume and it's half put together, or I can't find a link to a portfolio or something like that, it makes it harder to land interviews and stuff. I definitely think make sure your portfolio is in your resume and it's easy to navigate around that, or your website, or make sure it's all clear. Ultimately deciding factor is probably gonna be your portfolio if you get an interview or not, and make sure your resume is, well put together. And if you go to college or high school, you should be learning that skill. It's definitely very valuable, even if this field isn't really like a resume-based field per se, like a business field would be, but definitely make sure it's well put together still. Xavier Trish asks, favorite camera / lens combo? Probably, right? I mean, I still love my C70. Probably the C70 with the 24-70. Just convenience is really big for me right now, truthfully. I think sometimes the best camera you have is the one you have on you. I think C70 with 24-70 definitely, because you can get so much with just that one lens. Zach Gardner 22, favorite moment you've had with an MLB player? That's a really good question. I would say one of my favorite shots I've ever gotten of a player is the Ronald Acuna walk-off home run in 2021. And then we went to Vegas recently. I know there's a lot of recency bias in these answers, but we went to Vegas recently for all MLB and was on the golf course with Lars Nootbaar, mic'd him up, and that was really fun. I like golf, and that's why I thought it was fun, and it was just fun to, it was just fun and easy to shoot. That was definitely one of my more favorite ones. And then we also were at the World Series with Ozzy Albies, and obviously Ozzy plays for the Braves. And he's great, so that was awesome too. Calzadilla Media asks, how do you remove noise from video and avoid panning? I mean, if you want to avoid panning, you can always shoot wider or get in a new spot where you don't have to pan as much. In terms of avoiding noise, make sure your ISO's low. Definitely don't put your ISO, if you're not on manual, try manual ISO first. Don't put your ISO over 1600 unless you absolutely have to, depending on the camera too. Better cameras, you'll probably be allowed to go higher. Always make your aperture as shallow depth of field as possible, so f2.8 if you have the capability, but always go as low as you can on that number. And then always, if you're in a dark setting, your shutter speed should never be less than double what your frame rate is. So if you're shooting 24 frames a second, your shutter speed should be 1/50 at f2.8. And then if your ISO, try and not go above 1600 on pretty much any camera. But unless you have to, there are times where I have to go to 2500, 3200, but that's only in at events or dim lit spaces, tunnels or something like that. Kirk T. Kirk, what up, man? He asks a great question. Which part of the editing process do you wish could be done automatically that isn't? Definitely sizing videos to different ratios, 4:5 to 9:16. That's just a pain, especially if you have captions and stuff. Crush Media _ asks, a piece of gear that isn't a common need or essential to shoot with, but you can't live without? That's a great question. I would say an iPhone mount for your hot shoe. In times where I want shots of both from my C70 and from an iPhone, because regardless of if you agree with it or not, people like iPhone angles. It makes the video more relatable, makes it feel like they're there or they shot the video. So I'd say an iPhone hot shoe mount. So you can do both. I think we've had tons of stuff behind the scenes videos from photo shoots when I'm on a gimbal or something like that. It's just really nice piece of gear to have. Do I use it all the time? No, but it is really good in certain scenarios, and people love that angle for whatever reason. By Luke Roman asks, how do you structure pricing for clients? This is a great question. I don't freelance anymore, but to give you an idea of what I did when I was in college, I first started making the basic sorority videos and wedding videos, but I first started doing it freshman, sophomore year, and I did 500 for the video, and then I upped it to 1,000 by the end of college. And then I was doing weddings I started doing 750, and then I went up to 1,500 by the end. The last wedding I shot, which was probably 5 years ago or 6 years ago now, before the pandemic, so it's been a while. But I would say do what you're comfortable with. The day rate for a good videographer, I would say 1,000, 800 to 1,000. But yeah, I think by the end of my freelance time, 2021, it was $1,000 probably for a pretty intensive shoot and maybe a little bit of an edit. But yeah, it's really all what you value your own work at and how comfortable you are pushing that. Sunny Filmed It asked, what's the best way to get credentials? I already said don't DM people directly for credentials. Definitely form a relationship with that athlete or entity first, and then work will come. For example, if you're DMing an athlete, you could send him a video that you've done in the past or photos you've done and be like, hey man, would love to shoot one of your games at some point. Let me know if you're ever interested in that. I'll do it for this price or free, or you don't even have to do that, but definitely just reach out with the intention like of offering up your services first rather than just being like, hey, do you know how I can get a credential here? Because that's just going to come off as like, abrasive. You're just trying to use the person. So Jordan Flicks by Jordan, what's up, man? Asks, how did you keep your motivation / drive before you started doing this full time? It's definitely hard. I think even when I'm full time or whatever, before I became full-time, I was burnt out at times, especially the end of the baseball season. It gets hard. Do different types of projects. Do non-sports projects. I've found whenever you shoot non-sports things, it's pretty relieving. It's oftentimes easier. You have more control of the environment, and it's just refreshing. Maybe you're not going to be outside as much, but it gets your eye off that. That's something that helped me when I was freelance, and I didn't even do that much non-sports stuff, but it's something that helped me over the years. It's do a wedding or something, or Strew and Davi. I don't know. Thoughts on relationship building with athletes to achieve great videos? This is like a great question. It's a great way to go about it, as I've mentioned on other questions. Athletes, especially young athletes now, they love content. If they're like a high-end high school recruit or a college athlete at a smaller school or a bigger one even, they love content. Cameras are all over sports, and it's been this way for like 6-7 years. A way to get into the industry is certainly DMing athletes, offering up your services. I'll come shoot a workout. I'll come shoot one of your practices, one of your games, and I'll just give the stuff to you. That's just a great way to build a portfolio. And then once you have that portfolio, you can start applying for jobs with teams or agencies or leagues. I think that's a really good way in. And if you build a relationship with an athlete early on, shooting his AAU tournaments or football games, and give them that content for free, who knows where that athlete might go, right? They might go to the top of the sport. They might be on a team at a college, and players hold a lot of power at schools and in leagues and on teams. So if you want to get a way in to shooting games, that's definitely a good way to do it. Now, every situation's different, of course. Don't just go DMing everyone, but do it respectfully, of course, like any normal human should. That's the Q&A. Hope y'all got some good insight from this video. I'm sorry if I wasn't able to answer your question. I tried to focus on just the videography videos this time. Thanks for sending them in, y'all. We're gonna keep going on these videos until the season really starts kicking off. So appreciate you guys and gals, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Make sure you like and subscribe.